Hey, what is up everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today we are going to uncover something that's going to supercharge your e-commerce game. I'm talking about Medusa.js, the open source gem that gives developers a whole new way to build online stores. Imagine this. You are a developer with a brilliant e-commerce idea. You want to build something rich, reliable, and fast without getting bogged down by reinventing the wheel. Well, that is where Medusa.js swoops in and saves the day. At its core, Medusa.js offers modularized commerce logic. It's like a toolkit of essential e-commerce components. Think carts, products, order management, all for you to piece together. No more wrestling with complex commerce intricacies. You are free to focus on what really matters, creating an amazing storefront. Sounds exciting, right? Don't forget to show that like button some love, hit subscribe, and let's get ready to dive into a new world with Medusa.js with me. Okay, so now let's actually go ahead and explore the website of Medusa a bit. So if you haven't got the picture yet, Medusa.js is almost considered an open source to Shopify. So if you're used to using tools like Shopify to build your e-commerce, then moving to Medusa will feel right at home. So Medusa is built on top of Express.js. And like I said in the beginning, it comes with a bunch of pre-built modules that will help you to get an e-commerce set up as quickly as possible and as reliable and feature-rich as possible. So let's take a look some of the big names that already use Medusa in their enterprise in production. So we are assured that Medusa.js is stable. And I can tell you from experience that they have been growing a lot. This website has improved so much and the documentation is just brilliant. And another thing is Medusa.js is very customizable. It has a lot of CLI tools and JavaScript SDKs that we can use to interact with the backend. But pretty much what Medusa.js gives us is a backend that has all these commerce logic. And it gives us this amazing looking admin panel. So if you're familiar with Shopify, it pretty much gives you a Shopify admin panel to manage your store, products, customers, all those type of things. And we can set up different regions across global markets, set up different channels where we're selling from. We can set up our payment providers, fulfillments, etc. And the best thing about Medusa.js and this project is they give you a Next.js starter template to get off the ground as quick as possible. This starter project has a lot of, well, pretty much all the main functionality that a basic e-commerce will need off the bat. The template doesn't look that great, but it's totally customizable as it's built with Next.js. You would download the project from a repository and then it uses Tailwind CSS, and from there you can continue on. Here are some of the comments that you can read. And Medusa.js has a wide variety of plugins that you can use for Stripe, for Google, PayPal. It can connect to Strapi, Next.js, just a bunch of them, and you can explore a lot of them over here. And the way the plugins work is extremely easy, and it's easy to create your own plugins as well. So let's actually go ahead and look at the documentation for the developers. So we can click on this developers doc, and it will take us to this screen over here. So let's go to the overview screen. So here we have Medusa documentation. So what we can see here, I would definitely recommend spend some 2-3 days just reading through the documentations. If you're able to consume all of this in one day, great. Otherwise, spend like a week, go through the documentation, understand what Medusa is actually giving to you. But here we have a getting started guide that gets us set up with a fully fledged Medusa project in one command. And this one command sets up the backend, the API, Express API backend, as well as the front end that runs our admin panel. And here we can explore some of the commerce modules that Medusa gives to us and how to customize them with Medusa development or add your own custom logic. We also have guides for the non-code or non-technical users. So for example, if you were to be a freelancer and build e-commerce shops for your clients, this guides will help them understand the admin panel and how to manage certain things. Then we have some toolkits. So like I said, we have the backend, we have the admin dashboard, and then we have a JavaScript clients. These are the SDKs that we can use for React as well, and some plugins for analytics, storage with your images, notifications, etc. And then we have Medusa CLI, the Next.js starter template, which we're also going to look at. So we're going to look at these three up here, as well as the Next.js starter template. And then here are some references to how the APIs work. So this is the documentation for working with the admin panel. You can also extend the admin panel as you like, and you can extend the APIs. And here is some of the base store APIs. Then we have what is new. We have admin widgets that's in beta mode. And yeah, Medusa UI, which is a collection of React components that you can reuse in the admin panel to build like a new section for your client. So let's actually scroll up. Let's go ahead and use or take a look at this getting started documentation. So I'm not going to read everything line to line. I'm just going to point out some of the important things to note. And first off, the prerequisites. We need Node.js installed already. We need Git, and your node should be 16 or higher. And then we have PostgreSQL that should be running. So for this project, I don't have PostgreSQL installed on my computer. But for this project, I would suggest going to this GitHub repository. I'll link it down below. And start from the branch which I would mark as starting. And then here you can copy this Docker Compose file. This Docker Compose file pretty much just gives us a Postgres database with one command. So in this README, you can see the guides to setting this up successfully. And once again, it says you need Node.js older than 16. And then you need Docker Desktop in order if you don't have Postgres running locally. If you have Postgres running locally, then you don't need Docker Desktop. But to run this repository, you need Docker Desktop and Git. So without further ado, let's actually go to the IDE and start following this installation guide and set up our very own e-commerce store with Medusa.js. So let's head over to the IDE. So in here, I am on the starting branch for the repository. And in here, we have two files. We have the README and the Docker Compose. So the Docker Compose, you can just read through it. It's a basic Postgres database. So we have our DB service, which pulls the Postgres image. We create a volume called PostgreSDB. We set up some required environment variables. This is required the first time when you launch or build this image. And then we expose some ports. So we're exposing the default ports so that we can actually access this Postgres database from our Medusa.js backend. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new branch from the starting branch called backend. So let's say git switch and let's call it backend. So now we have a new branch backend. And what we want to do and start here is first off, let's actually start our let's actually start our Postgres database. So I have Docker running. So Docker PS, we can see, okay, maybe I don't have it running. Let's get it started up. So we have to get Docker Desktop up and running. So once that is up and running, we can actually start our database. So the first part of the backend that we're going to do is go through that installation guide, get our Medusa API and our storefront up and running, and then we're going to play around with that a bit, and then we're going to move over to the Next.js starter template and connect all of those together to have a fully functioning e-commerce store. So my Docker Desktop is running. So if I say Docker PS, we can see it's running. So let's run that first command in the README. Okay, so I don't need to build it because it's already built, but I'm just going to run this command anyway. So there we have our DB up and running. So if I would say Docker PS, we can now see we have our Postgres database running. So that is great. the next start, let's actually head over. So I'm going to do some switching between the IDE and the guide to run the required commands. So let's go ahead to the guide. So we have this all set up now. Now we need to create a Medusa app. So it's very, very easy. We just take this command right here. We paste that in, and it's going to pull down the latest project. So we can take a look at what are some of the commands options we can provide. For example, one that I want to run is the seed. So I definitely want it to seed the database once it starts the project. So it seeds some of the demo data. So we have like a default, a t-shirt and a mug and stuff that the store is going to sell. And then the next one is this DB URL, which I'm also going to copy. I'm going to paste that in here. And this DB URL gets formed in the following way. Okay, so if I were to, let's go to this Docker Compose. I'm just going to paste something in here. So I'm not going to save it. So this would be the format of the DB URL for Postgres. So we have the Postgres service, then we have our username, our password, our host, and then our DB name, which we can all find from up here. So let's actually copy that. Our DB name is just Medusa DB. Our username is just your username, and our password is your password. So we're going to copy that in here. And then our host is just going to be localhost. Localhost. So this would be our DB URL. So I'm going to cut that from there. And then I'm going to paste this in right just like this. So with this, we have our creation commands. I'm going to maybe zoom in a little bit here. Maybe this helps reading. Okay. So here we can see the command npx create Medusa app at latest. We see the database, and here's the database information. So let's go back and ensure there's some other commands that you can, options that you can take a look at. But for now, oh, here it actually gives us the example string of a Postgres database. So this is for a Vercel Postgres database. So you can just remove some of the Vercel related stuff. But anyway, let's get up, and it gives you some connections to different types of databases. And then we need to go through the steps of the project. So let's actually do that. I'm going to run this command, and this command might take some time because it's setting up a lot of things for us, right? It's setting up Express backend with a lot of modules and a lot of routes and controllers and services that's already built. And it's setting up a backend admin panel. So I'm just going to hit yes for this, and now it will start the installation process. Okay, then we got prompted, what is your project name? So let's just call this backend, Medusa backend. So this will create a directory called Medusa backend. What is your admin user that you're going to use to sign in to the admin panel? What would you want the email to be? So let's just take the FULLSTACKJUNKIE@gmail.com. And we're starting the project. So this might take some time. So here we can do some reading, some tips and tricks about the project. And yeah, it's very interesting. So once this is done, I'll get back to you. Okay, so after a quick coffee break, it took about, let's say, 6-7 minutes for this to run. We can see that we have created a new project directory, which we can see it was created, Medusa backend. We installed all the dependencies, so it had like a package JSON obviously, and it installed all the dependencies required for this backend. It built the project, it ran the database migrations. We created the admin user, which email we provided up here. It seeded the database with demo data, and it's finishing the preparations, and the project is prepared. Then we see a bunch of other output logs here. We can see Redis URL is not found. So Medusa.js also uses Redis. So I'll actually, once we're done with this, I'll go through some of the architectural aspects of Medusa.js so that some of the stuff could make sense a bit more. Then we have our JWT secret, our cookies secret, and all of these stuff was set by default. So we can see it's using a fake Redis instance because we're not running one now. And it has just set the secrets of the JWT and the cookie secrets. And then we can see some output being logged. And once all of these outputs were logged, we can see they're using some Winston or some output logger for the APIs. And then we can see it's calling some admin API the whole time. So let's go ahead. Once this was done running, it actually opened up this web browser. So now we can see, let's get you started, create an admin account to access your Medusa dashboard. So let's actually do the step-by-step installation. So we can say sign up. We have the email we provided at the start, and now we can just provide a very secure password. Okay, we can opt in or out for any of the anonymous data usage or sharing of data. So for now, as it's a development project and we're just running, let's help them out, see them improve by getting these telemetry logs. So let's create the account. And once we've created the account, we are logged into our dashboard. So we then have this stepper we can go through. So first of all, let's just take a breather and understand what just happened, right? We ran one command, we set up a database, and then we ran one command, and we have a fully fledged e-commerce engine running for us. So there's a few things that if you want to take this to production, you're going to need to add in your payment provider's specific API keys. And it comes set with PayPal and Stripe already as providers. So you would just need to change some environment variables, and then you have a working e-commerce store with payments and everything. And yeah, we have the Redis server that we can also set up to help with the pub/sub of orders, so that orders don't get lost in the process. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But it's just amazing that with one command, we were able to spin up pretty much a storefront, a backend for a storefront. And here we can view the products. We can see that some of the dummy data products was already loaded. We have this very beautiful dashboard that we can use. We have customers that we can add to groups. We have discount codes that we can create. We have gift cards. We can create different pricing lists and ranges. And then we have settings. So here we can manage some of our API keys for other plugins or third-party things to connect to our dashboard. We have personal information, return reasons, store details, the theme, tax. You can change or manage the tax of the different stores. We have sale channels. We have regions, so the tax in the regions for different products. And then we have the currency of your store. So if you are familiar with Shopify, then this will seem very close to home, right? You have pretty much the same type of things you can set up for a store and for e-commerce. And just think about this for a second, right? If there was not a tool like Medusa, we would either had to default to Shopify, which is still a great alternative. But now we have the power of all of these things in our hands, right? So not even talking about orders and products and managing all of those things, doing it yourself from scratch, it would be a very, very long progress to actually get to a solution like Medusa. So let's actually go through this setup guide. So learn the basics of Medusa by creating your first orders. Okay, so let's begin the setup. So create a product and set its general details such as title and description, its price, option, variance, image and more. You will then use the product to create a sample order. You can create a product by clicking the new product button below. So over here we have a new button product. Or alternatively, if you're not ready to create your own product, you can create a sample by just clicking this button. So I'm going to go ahead and do this, but if we take a look at creating a new product, we can see it gives us this form that we need to fill in, which is, it's crazy. It just blows my mind every time that this is free and it's open source and it's very customizable, very reliable. So we can then fill in out this form for the product that we need. There's different pieces of information that it would require, the variants of a product. So we have a red t-shirt, a small t-shirt, and a large t-shirt, and a green t-shirt with a small and a large. You can set those variants in here. We have attributes, for example, the weight, the length, different codes, mid code, HS code, country, origin. Then we have thumbnails for the pictures, and we have this nice drag and drop. And then we have the media, which is just the rest of the images for the product. So We can save it as a draft or we can publish this product. So I'm not going to go through this form now. I didn't prepare all that information, but no worry because Medusa has this great sample product. And once we click that, we can see the following. Okay, so it actually created our product, which is great. Now we can see we can review it with the different tools. So using the JS SDK client, we can view or search for this product in this fashion. So it actually gives you code during the step-up guide, so you can just get going as quick as possible. Here we can use the hooks from React, and yeah, just run this curl command and you will be able to see this newly created product and all of its API endpoints. So if I were to actually take this and paste it in a browser, here we can see the output of this new product. So I have an extension that formats JSON nicely. If it's raw, it just looks like this, which is not very readable. So if we parse it, we can see we have options, the profile, the variants, and some details about this product. So here we have a full-fledged API that follows REST convention to actually pull our product details. Okay, so we've done this preview. Next step. Okay, then we can create an order. So once again, if you want to create an order, you will have to go to draft. So if you don't create the order through the API, like an order step-by-step would happen, and you would want to do it in the dashboard, you first create a draft order, and then you select the product. So if we look at this, we select a region, and then we can go next. It's a stepper form, and then we will be able to select the products that's in this region, which it seems like there is no add a product. So we can select the product. This order these items and so forth. So you just step through the form. It's very, very well done. Let's just go ahead and create the sample order. And once we've created the sample order, it just shows you how this interface would look like. Let's do a refresh here. Create the sample order. And there we have our sample order. We can click on this order and then we can view all the information about this order. Okay, there was a bit of jumping there. My bad, I think I did something wrong with the navigation. But there we can see our order. We actually have two now because I clicked it twice. So there was a bit of thinking happening there. And then we can see the summary of the order. We can edit the order. We can mark it as it's already marked as paid. We can add a refund. It's still awaiting the fulfillment. So we can, at the end of the day, create a fulfillment. If you have like some shipping or you're doing the shipping automatically, then we can create fulfillment at the end of the day. And now we can see the order was fulfilled. And here we can actually view some of the details set on the fulfillment object and the customer's details. And then you can see the order in raw JSON here. So it's very developer friendly as well as non-developer friendly. So here we have a timeline of what happened during this order. And there we have created our first order. Okay, so the next thing is set up, finished, start developing with Medusa. So they give us some documentation to go to at a further point. So now we can see we have two orders already. We can do some filtering. So this dashboard is also pretty advanced. If you wanted to build something like that, this from scratch, it would cost you a lot of time and probably a lot of money. So now you can save the time. You don't have to necessarily save on the money, but you can save on the time. So here we can view all of these different things. So we can view the products. Let's take a look at one of these products. So it's part of a collection called merch. So if we take a look, we can group things in collections. And if you're familiar with Shopify, I know I've said it like a few times now, but truly, if you're familiar with Shopify, then this would just feel at home. So let's take a look. We have different variances: small, medium, large, extra large. And then you can see the quantity and inventory of each one of these variances. There's some attributes about it that's not set or not necessary to set. We have the media and the thumbnail. So just like that, we have a fully fledged backend with an admin panel running. Okay, so I'm not going to go into all the different parts of this admin panel. That would take quite some time. But here we can log out again and log in with our admin details. So let's actually do the sign out. Okay, so now we're able to log back in. So the FULLSTACKJUNKIE@gmail.com and our very secure password. And then there we're back into our dashboard. So this is insane. I'm still mind blown about this. So let's actually take a look at a few things in the documentation once again. Let's just recap what we did, right? We ran this command. We first set up our database, obviously, and then we ran this command. And then we had to choose a project name. It would have asked us for our Postgres credentials if we haven't provided this flag, which we already did. Then we enter the admin email, and then it can say after the following steps, the project will start with the following. It will create the project directory, which it did. It created the project database and connected to it, which it did. It installed all the dependencies, it built the project, it ran the migration for the database, unless you've added these flags. It created the admin user and it seeded the database with some dummy data. Then we were prompted to log into the admin dashboard with our admin user. So we followed this installation guide step by step. We have a working dashboard, a working backend, which is just unbelievable. Then we have next steps to go to. We can view some of the Medusa backend basics. We can check out some of the commerce modules and a recipe that we can follow once again for a learning path, which I would highly recommend going through. Then we have some troubleshooting. If you had any issues during your setup and it was one of these, do take a look here, and if it was helpful, just mark it as yes. If no, it's going to prompt you with a reason, or you can report an issue that you have and Medusa support team will get back to you on that. So that was the installation guide. So one thing I want to jump into, just so we can get a high overview of what exactly is running when we do this command, like what does it do for us. Let's actually go ahead into the Medusa development, and then we have the Medusa architecture. So they have this nice image. I would suggest reading this page. It makes it very clear about what is going on, at least from a high level perspective. But if I enlarge this, we can actually see a bit of information about what Medusa actually gives us. So we have our database, which is the Postgres one running, and then we have our pub sub server. So you saw during the logs, it had that fake Redis is running. So if you had an actual Redis instance running and you connected that Redis instance via its environment variables, then it would have connected to that instance. And the pub sub is used for orders and notifications and just things that has to go through a queuing system. So it also explains it down here. So we have subscribers. So there's certain things and event-driven architecture where there's an event that gets triggered, it gets added to a queue. This queue is built and used is using Redis. So there's different queuing systems that you can use. Medusa chose Redis, which is a very reliable and good piece of technology. And then subscribers will subscribe to different events and handle it from there. For example, adding an order, creating some different notification parts of the application. So this image kind of explains to us some of the architectural aspects, which I'm not going to go into depth now, but I would suggest take a look at this documentation as well. So we have our endpoints, our services, our subscribers, our entities, our plugins, and then our modules. Our modules are the cart, products, all the things that we saw on the side that we can configure from there. So we get a lot out of the box from Medusa, and I've emphasized that quite a few times now, but hopefully you can see it as well, and hopefully you can also start using Medusa to get them going. So some of the technologies that they use are PostgreSQL. They use type ORM. So if you're familiar with backend and ORMs working with the database, then you will know of type ORM. Their entities. So the entities are like the description of each table. You can add your own tables and your own routes. So a thing that you would see widely used is dependency injection. So Medusa backend uses dependency injection so that if you build your own services, that you have access to the core of Medusa's other plugins or services within your service. So it's just a very, very rich environment. And then we have running Redis. And then we have Express. So we can see some of the main pieces of technology that gets used, which is all of our favorite technologies from this channel, I'm guessing. So here we can see a lot more basics, insights. So during this Medusa development, This is a great documentation to go through. We can understand what are entities, what are the endpoints, how they connect together. We have services, events, loader, scheduled jobs, module, and then plugin. So highly recommend going through all of this. Now that we've seen some of the high overview of Medusa, the next part I want to jump into is setting up the Next.js template. No pun intended on that. The Next.js template to get our storefront up and running. So now we have our backend and our admin panel. I know I intertwine those topics. I call the admin panel the storefront, but this is not the storefront. We will set up the storefront with Next.js template, and then we have a fully functioning e-commerce store in like 45 minutes of this video. So let's get started. Okay, so let's actually jump off and do the Next.js quick start. So we're gonna use this template to get set up with a storefront and finish off our e-commerce setup with Medusa. So once again, some of the prerequisites, they ask that you already have your Medusa backend installed, and then they give you the setup commands for that as well. And then we have our installation of our Medusa starter template. So we're going to copy this. We're going to head over to our IDE again, and we're going to run that. So let's do that. Okay, so in our IDE, I have just stopped the project, the server running, and I've created a new branch. I've created the backend branch, and I've merged the backend branch into master now. So now master is up to date with whatever happened in the backend branch. So from master, I want to create a new branch called storefront, or let's just call it front end, or storefront. Let's just call it storefront. Storefront. This doesn't really matter. Okay, just so I can organize my Git repository for you guys as well. So in here, we will then start and paste this command. This command will create a Next app from this repository, which is the Next starter for Medusa. And let's just call this one Medusa storefront. So we have a repository in here called Medusa backend, and then we're creating a new repository in here from this Git repo called Medusa storefront. So let's run that, and this will download the files from the repo, and we can see we only have 3 commands or 3 steps in order to get this up and running. So once we have our project up and running, then we need to cd into the project, which we named something else now, and then we need to create a env file. So in Next.js, this is how we create an env file, and then once that is done, we can just run yarn dev, and then our next starter template should be running on localhost 8000. So our Medusa admin panel was running on localhost 7001, and our front end or our storefront will now run on localhost 8000. So let's actually go ahead, and once this is done, we can continue. Okay, so our installation is done. So now let's cd into that project. So I'm actually going to open up 2 terminals. So I'm going to split this to the right. So the one will be in our storefront, and the other will be in our backend. So I'm going to cd into the front end, which we've called Medusa storefront. Medusa storefront. Search file directory. What am I misspelling? Medusa. Oh, I spelled the directory name wrong. Medusa storefront. Okay. And then I'm just gonna zoom out a little bit. This is a bit too small. Okay. And then in here we are in the Medusa storefront, and then in this one we want to cd into the Medusa backend. Okay, let's start up our Medusa backend again. Let's take a look at what command to run for this. So in the package JSON, under the scripts, we can do a start or a dev. So this will run our admin panel in development mode. So let's run yarn dev. Let's get that started up. And then in the front end, we will do the same thing. We will first have to create the new environment variables. So there, our admin panel is now running. So let's close that up. And we need to take the example env, which would be this env template, which has a few environment variables in, one for melee search or Algolia. So this is just some search engine that we will use for your front end to search for products. Then we have some different environment variables, for example, your base URL and your backend Medusa URL, next URL. Okay, so let's actually say move the .env.template, and we want to call it .env.local. So let's just confirm with the documentation again. So they said the env template should be env local. So we can do that now, and we can see it has created, let's just close this one. It has created a new env local file. So now, according to the documentation, if we were to run this yarn dev, we will have a Node or a Next.js application up and running on localhost 8000. Let's go ahead and do that. Running localhost 8000. Fingers crossed everything is working smoothly. Let's give it some time to load and log into our backend again. Guessing the Next.js app is still building and loading everything. There we can see it made some requests to the store endpoint, and there we have our e-commerce template up and running. So here we can see the products which are in our admin dashboard. So if we go to products, we can see the Medusa t-shirt, we have the coffee mug, and here we can view that items so we can explore the rest of the products. We get this filter by collection. There is all of our items and their images. So if I were to click on an item, we get this very nice looking storefront from the get-go. This is like a Shopify template from the get-go. And it's very customizable. If you know Next.js, you can completely customize this front end as you please. So there we have it, right? We have a front end storefront running. We have an admin panel running and a backend running. So what I want to do now is I want to explore just some of the folder structures of these projects that we've created. So if we take a look, we can add products to a cart. So currently there's no items in our cart. We can log in and create an account. So let's actually finish exploring this a bit. I'm going to create a gmail.com. So let's see if I try and log in. These credentials do not match any of our records because I'm not registered yet. So let's say not a member, join us. So let's do this, John Doe at gmail.com. Oops. And let's just add a phone number and then a password. And let's join. And there we're logged in. We can see we haven't completed our profile completely yet. So we can add an address probably. We can see a few information about our profile. For example, the information we've added in, we can see our billing addresses we can add. We can change a password. We can add an address. So it gives us this nice, so this is crazy, right? You get this off the bat, it's completely free. And we have orders. We can connect to customer service, which there's no page for this at the moment, which you can go and extend and add your own customer service, right? So now we have our profile section, and let's actually add stuff to the cart. So we can take, I want this item, I want a large, let's say extra large, and I say add to cart. Then we can see our cart has one item in, so we can say go to bag, and then we can view our cart and do a checkout. So let's actually make it 2 of these t-shirts. We can see the totals update. We can do our checkout, and then it has a shipping form. You can see the smile on my face about how insanely cool this is. and we can just add the information. So let's go ahead and do that. John Doe, testing. My address is also testing. My apartment is testing. Postal code, my city. So these are some of the countries that are listed probably in the dashboard as regions. So they've connected from the dashboard. Let's actually verify that. Go under settings. We can see our regions. And under our regions, we have a few countries: Sweden, United Kingdom, Germany, and 3 more. We can hover, and that is exactly all the countries that we have in the list. So we are able to connect and set it up. Here we can see shipping options for the different regions as well. And we can edit this region. So edit region details. So we can see we have 7 countries in this list. We can add more to this list. And if we were to, for example, add, let's say, what is another European country? Belgium. Let's add Belgium into this list. And we save and close. We have successfully updated. So now if I go to this page and I do a refresh, let's see what happens here. Back to shopping cart. Let's do the checkout. And we should see Belgium. There we have Belgium in our list. So this is very cool. Let me just go ahead and do all this again. And then we can choose a state and then a number. Same as billing information. We can say continue to delivery. No thanks. So it has this great looking form. We can choose our delivery option, and this was also set from the dashboard. You can see we have our fake standard, our fake express, and these are the delivery options. We can choose standard. It will update based on our shipping we've chosen. If we choose the express one, this would probably update. Correct, updated. And then we have a test payment, because currently we haven't set up any payment providers yet. But if you would set up any payment provider, you can view them here. So we have discount code or gift code, and let's do a checkout. So now it's talking to the backend, it's doing a lot of stuff, and here we can see we have just created an order. So if I were to go to my account and under orders, I should see an order. There I have placed an order for 2 extra large Medusa t-shirts, and I can view the order details. So honestly, this is just, it's so amazing that this is completely free. We have all this parts to jump off from. Like I said, the template isn't that great, but I mean, no free templates are usually that great. But if you really want to, you can just give a base price for a client and go from this point and start working on the front end. You have all the backend functionality that you would need in order to run a successful e-commerce store. And if you need something custom or extra, you can start editing that and working on that. So let's actually dive into a few things with regards to the project folder structure. So we have our 2 projects running over here. So let's take a look at our projects. So in the backend, we have a dist folder. We have our data, which is our seeding data. We have a build folder and a cache folder. Then we have our node modules, which is probably a lot of modules. And then we have uploads for any file uploads. So if you haven't set up an upload provider or a storage provider like Cloudinary or AWS or any other cloud storage, then it would probably save all your images to the uploads folder. And then let's take a look at, we have the Medusa config. This is where you would set up a lot of your environment variable type things. So it has different types of environments already set up for you for production, staging and testing, and then development. And it loads the appropriate env files based on that. So that's also a very good practice, and you can learn a lot from taking this boilerplate or standard Medusa project and work from here. You can see admin cores, store cores, database URL, which is pulled from the database URL env file, which got set up during our installation process. And then we have plugins. So here we can add more plugins. So we can see we have the Medusa manual fulfillment. So if you have some other plugin for FedEx or other fulfillment providers, and they have plugins based on the Medusa plugins, you can register them in here. We have Medusa payment, which is manual. So you can add Stripe and PayPal, you can add them in here as well. I'm not going to do that in this video because otherwise it's going to be too much and too long. But if you guys are interested in seeing this store setup just go to something that a client would actually use, then just like this video, subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know, and then we can make that happen. So then we have our file, Medusa file plugin, which just adds to the upload directory, which makes sense. Then we have the Medusa admin, and we can configure some of the different types of things for the admin panel. If you were to add or extend the admin panel and add new menus or new functionality, you would probably need to do some configuration in here as well. So here we have our event bus, which runs Redis. Like I mentioned before, we have event-driven subscribers and pub sub happening in Medusa. So this will just ensure the actual reliability of orders and doing payments and things like that, so that it doesn't get lost. So it stays in the queue, and if it fails, it keeps on retrying. So it's not like if a few orders come in at the same time, like 2 of them are going to get lost. It goes into this queuing system, which is very reliable and actually a good way of handling things like this. And we can set the JWT secret, the cookie secret, and a bunch of other things. So here we can add our Redis URL. So this is the Medusa config file. This is like the main entry point. Here we have the next entry point where we create our Express app. And if you're familiar with Express, you can go through this. It just does some graceful shutdowns. And then it goes to the server part with the port. And then we can take a look at the source folder. So here we have admin, where we can load some of the components, the types. So this is for the admin app that's running. Then we have the APIs, where we have all our routes, and you can add more routes as you want for different things. If your functionality in your store needs a specific route that does some calculation or different business logic, then you can just add your own custom route. Then we have loaders, we have migrations, models. So this will contain some of the entities that you want to add. So you want to add more tables in your Postgres database, you can add them in here. So these are just some of the folders that are important for the backend. So once again, read the documentation, and if this video gets good views and likes, then we can actually take it further and start building on top of this. So in the front end, we have a basic Next.js project. You can see they're running Cypress, which is great. So you already have a Cypress project up and running. Let's actually take a look at the package.json of the backend. That's always a good place to look at some of the things. So the dependencies, a lot of Medusa dependencies. We have a React query from the TAN stack. We have body parser, cores.env, Express, some of the, once again, we have payment Stripe already set up. We have Prism, type ORM, and then some of the development dependencies as well. So always a good start to look at that. A lot of the packages would probably be encapsulated within the Medusa projects itself. So that is the backend. The front end, or the storefront, is our normal Next.js application. We have our source, and they're using the app directory. So not the pages directory, they're using the app directory, which is the newer version of Next.js. So you can obviously combine this or continue using with this. But let's take a look at the dependencies in the package.json. Where is it at? There it is. So we have some scripts. We have a Cypress script that we can run to check if everything is working. And let's take a look. We have the PayPal SDK, Stripe SDK. It's all configured in here. Also using React query to fetch our data. We are using the Medusa React plugin, so the SDK, to use some of the hooks to fetch data. We have React flags, which is just a package with flags. We have Sharp for Next.js applications. And then we have Tailwind CSS, we have Prettier, Post CSS, a bunch of things that if you've been working and actually gotten to a point of building an e-commerce shop, you probably are familiar with a few of these things. They are using React Form for form validation. Yeah, this is just how the projects are structured. So in here we have our libs where we have context. So they're using context. We have some data hooks, Medusa fetches, some util functions. We have modules, which is the the account, cart, checkout, collection. So this is probably like different templates for all of them. Yes. So that's cool. Then we have styles from the global style sheet, and then we have types, which are just our interfaces probably that gets used. Types and interfaces, yes. Okay, so there you go. Entire e-commerce project up and running with as minimal effort as possible, and it's completely extendable. This project is completely yours. You can customize it, you can work on it as you go, and it's just truly amazing. Last thing I want to do, just for interesting facts, if you wanted to build a database or a backend that has all of these functionalities in, right? Just take a look at how many tables this project has. So if we go into the public, so this is the Postgres database, it has 100 database tables for cards, cart discount, gifts, images, currencies, countries, customers, customer groups, discount conditions, rules, drafted orders. Like, I mean, this is insane. This is so much work that had to go into actually architecting something like this. So yeah, and you have full access to this database now. You can, change things, add things, just as you please. Where if you were to do it with a paid solution, for example, Shopify, you don't have this customizability and power to work with this. So yeah, let's wrap this video up. I really do hope you enjoyed this video, and if you liked it, give it a like, and then we might continue building upon this project that we've created. But till the next video, cheers.